This is TWiT.
Who among us has not wanted Google to remove unflattering photographs or information about us that pop up when someone Googles our name? When someone Googled our next guest's name, the information that came up was not only unflattering, it was extremely unflattering. In fact, Google said she was dead. Rachel Abrams is a business reporter for the New York Times. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
So because this was fixed presumably because you work for the New York Times and you wrote an article about it. But before it was fixed, tell us what happened when someone Googled the name Rachel Abrams.
Sure. So first, my dad alerted me that that basically it said that I was dead on a knowledge graph panel, which is the box of information that pops up to the right of search results when you Google commonly searched terms like Macy's or Brad Pitt. And so this box had biographical details for somebody else with my picture on it. So I get this text message from my dad saying, you died in 2013. He was reasonably sure I had not died. And I sort of ignored it because it seemed very inconsequential. Anyone that knows me would not have been confused. But then I met with actually a journalism student who I had only seen once. She came to the New York Times to do coffee and sort of follow up. And she said, I was sort of alarmed to read that you had passed away. And so I thought, maybe this is an error worth fixing. And so that sort of started my quest to try to tell somebody at Google that I was in fact alive and that this was wrong.
So it was a little bit of like a hero's journey. Tell us about what steps you took to try to get this or just get your photo off the knowledge graph.
So my photo comes from the New York Times website. It's my official New York Times headshot that appears on my bio page, which everybody here has. And so because it was sort of a work product issue, I contacted somebody on the corporate communications team at Google, and I told them, explain my situation. I said, is there anything I can do to fix this? I didn't, I think I also used one of Google's many, many feedback options that they offer online. I can't remember which one came first, to be honest, but I think it was, I don't have the story in front of me, but I used some feedback option. Google has a bunch depending on what product you need and what issue you have. So the spokeswoman basically pointed me toward a publicly available website to suggest a change to this knowledge graph panel. So that's the first time I even find out what this box is. It's called a knowledge graph panel. And she basically just says I should go through these steps. And so the first step to correcting or suggesting a change to a knowledge graph panel is that Google has to recognize you as an authorized, they recognize you as an official expert or authority on a topic. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's some formal procedure. And so I thought, okay, that's fine. That seems annoying, but I am an expert on what I look like and who I am and whether I'm dead. So I try to use some of these steps, and it becomes very clear that none of these steps seem appropriate. And not only that, but I don't even understand what a couple of these things mean. And I'm not a tech reporter, I'm a business reporter, but I'm also just personally kind of a not techie person. So I thought, well, maybe this is maybe everyone knows this and knows what this means and what to do. But I emailed the spokeswoman again. I get no response. I try to make these steps work. I tell the little bot at the bottom of the steps that her advice was not helpful, which prompts me to fill out another feedback form. So I fill out another feedback form, and I hit submit, and this bot, whose name is Katie, I guess, which is like the only human that's really made. This is the closest thing to a human that average people get when they're trying to contact Google for help. So Katie says thank you, and there's no pledge to do anything. So I was thinking, okay, so I really am running out of ideas. So I decided to call the Googleplex, which is the name of Google's headquarters. And I call the Googleplex, and I get an automated message, and they very quickly, they'll tell you, we don't have support here, because I'm sure that a bajillion people call the Googleplex with problems, like tech problems on various Google products. So I call, and the recording sort of insists, I'm making this, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's essentially like, are you sure you want to stay on the phone? We really can't help you. And it's a really busy day today at the Googleplex, and there's plenty of information online. And if you stay on, the bright side for all of this is that it says that if you don't enjoy the hold music, you can browse Google's music selection, which is nice, I guess. At least they offer you something. So I hold, and I finally get to a human after about 20 minutes. And at the end of 20 minutes, the person that comes on the phone is sort of, I think she was like I don't even know what she did. She was probably somebody that like would direct my call to another part of Google. And she was like, oh, let me see, if I can help you or figure out where you should go. So she basically puts me on hold while she essentially Googles my problem and pulls up this page. She said, well, I found this page online. I said, okay, please direct me to what you're looking at since it's just online. Let me look at it while I'm talking to you in case I have any questions. And the page is essentially part of Google's online help forum for people, where users can ask questions and get them answered, not even necessarily by Google, but by people that might know the answer. And sometimes someone at Google will endorse the answer. So what I'm saying is she's pointing me toward a publicly available forum where members of the public are asking and answering questions as far as I can tell. And so somebody in the forums had a similar problem with their knowledge graph card, not saying that they're dead, but it's just stuff that was wrong. And she basically is reading off this card and saying, well, your problem can take 3 weeks or 3 months. And the best thing you could do is to submit feedback over and over and over again from multiple times. Even the woman on the phone very helpfully told me try multiple times a day. But on this site, it says try multiple times from different IP addresses. Try to get your friends to help if possible. And I basically surmise that this will help push my request to the top of Google's to-do pile, or it will do absolutely nothing. There's no way to know. And I just sort of thanked her. And the last step I took was to email Google's CEO to ask what people should do. And at the same time as I do that, I basically go back to the spokeswoman and say, I'm doing a story on this, and here are my questions, and do you have any comment? Which is something you have to do to be fair in any story, but something that I realized might also push them to fix it. That's not why that I asked them, but I realized that would be a potential consequence of me asking them, which again is an avenue to fix an issue that the average users won't have. And sure enough, within hours, it was changed.
Yeah, I mean, I just did the Google search right now, and I do get the knowledge graph report, or the little box on the side. Your photo's no longer attached there. However, the top search result is your name at the New York Times. Interesting how they do selection on one, and and say this is the topmost obviously referenced person versus the search results being something completely different. What did you learn about kind of the machinations of the knowledge graph in this whole process, other than that it's really hard to change anything that happens to appear there?
So the knowledge graph, I can't pretend like I really know a whole lot about it, but the knowledge graph it pulls from a lot of different sources from the internet in terms of where it gets its information. A lot of times the information comes from Wikipedia. I don't have a Wikipedia page, but the other more famous Rachel Abrams does have a Wikipedia page, which is where all those biographical details came from. The sprinter named Rachel Abrams from the Northern Mariana Islands, she also has a Wikipedia page, which is one of the reasons why smart speakers might identify those two people more quickly when you ask questions like, who is Rachel Abrams? Because Wikipedia is one of the more commonly sourced, one of the places where the box gets information most commonly, from what I can tell. But if you have an official webpage, there are other places around the internet where Google could get information. And so what I think happened, and I did not get an answer from Google about this, but just based on talking to people that know this world and could make an educated guess, what I think might have happened was that Google basically scanned the Wikipedia page of the Rachel Abrams, the other writer whose details were in that box. They saw that the only photo on her Wikipedia page was a very small, grainy photo that was probably too low quality for what Google's algorithm thinks is appropriate for that box. And so Google, the mechanism probably, in my best guess, is that it scanned the rest of the internet for a New York Rachel Abrams writer. I mean, I really don't know what else was searched for, but they probably looked for basically another photo that would match this person. And because I am also a New York writer, Rachel Abrams, that might have been why Google plucked my photo from the New York Times webpage.
Yeah, what's interesting to me now is as you were talking, I went over to the images tab, and the photo that used to be attached to it, your photo that used to be part of that knowledge graph little box, is the very first result that you get on the Google Images search if you just do a straight search for Rachel Abrams.
Really?
So then it kind of seems like, okay, well, the fallback, I guess, is not the Wikipedia image, it's whatever comes first. There it is, right up at the top left corner.
Yeah, so those, and I recognize the other Rachel Abrams is also in that top section, and I also see a photo from a third Rachel Abrams author. I'm also not the Rachel Abrams that wrote The Multi-Orgasmic Woman, which is the woman on the top. So there's a lot of us, and I've been mistaken for a lot of them, but I am the famous Rachel Abrams out there.
You are you.
Well, the problem, the reason why I was so fascinated with this is it is part of the knowledge graph, and that is Google sort of implicitly saying, here's the truth, here's the answer you're looking for, and it's clearly not the truth. And also, you point out in your article, this is what Google's smart speaker uses to answer questions as well.
Yes. So Google and Alexa, it seemed like, rely heavily on these cards to answer questions. So they probably pull from these cards, meaning that if the cards have information that isn't correct, the speakers will repeat them, which just means that whatever error there is going to be duplicated in another context. And I should point out, because I point this out in the story, and I just want to make it clear, this is sort of a lighthearted issue for me. But one of the reasons we chose to do this story is because for many, many people, misinformation about themselves on the internet is very damaging. We live in an age of revenge porn and cyberbullying, and when things go wrong online, it can really affect your job prospects and your reputation, and that's why there are entire companies that you can pay to help try to fix misleading information, or even just information you don't like about yourself online, is because it is a serious issue. That's not the case in this particular circumstance, but that certainly is the case for a lot of people. So I just want to make it clear that, like, the fact that this was very difficult for me as a member of the media, somebody for whom you would think that Google would want to change or have more of an incentive, then I can't imagine how hard it is for other people that are dealing with problems about information about themselves online.
Yeah.
And so part of your reporting, you spoke to the CEO of Reputation Defender, which is a service that does this. And, I always feel like did you feel like that what they can do actually works? I mean, I know in the past some people have used them, and then if you find, if someone's trying to target you online and ruin your search results on purpose, if they learn that you're using a service like, Reputation Defender, you can get in trouble for that too.
I am not in a position to comment on how effective their services are. I just basically talk to them about what the options are for people looking to correct information about themselves online. What I thought was really interesting, though, about what they said I could do was that essentially my only real option for correcting information that was out there, in this case a photo, was by putting more information about myself onto the internet. Like, that is the best option. It's not fixing what's already there. It's creating new information that can hopefully shove the bad information out of the way if your information somehow becomes more popular, or I don't know how this works. I think a lot of people who aren't computer or very tech savvy people might also not really quite understand how this works. But one of the options he said that I could use was essentially I could create an entirely new web page for myself and hope that one day I basically become more famous than the other Rachel Abrams, so that I would get a knowledge graph card, and then mine could shove hers out of the way when people search for Rachel Abrams. And this just seemed like a really unfair strategy to both her and to me, because why is the solution to fix something that's wrong about myself to put more of myself onto the internet? And also, just to be fair, I'm sorry to ramble, but just to be fair to Google, because there are a lot of people working really, really hard on a very complicated issue at a company that affects so many people and has to deal with so much information. But, they get so many requests every day to fix stuff about knowledge graph panels or search results. And as Rich Matta from Reputation Defender pointed out, you have to assume that a lot of those requests might be inaccurate or misleading in and of themselves, or at the very least outside the scope of what Google is willing to do. Google, if the information about you appears on another website and Google is just surfacing it, then oftentimes Google is not going to think that that's Google's problem unless there's something illegal going on. in which case you can submit a different kind of request. You can submit a legal request to Google, and you have other mechanisms or other levers to pull to fix stuff. So I mean, there's just simply too many requests coming at them for them to be able to handle this in a really as quick as many people like myself might like.
And of course, there are other corporations trying to, there's a corporate fight basically between, Apple and Google and Amazon, especially with smart speakers. And so I asked my Echo Dot if you were dead, and I took a video, and clearly someone at Amazon really wants to know that they know that there are many Rachel Abrams. So Alex, can we Echo? Is Rachel Abrams dead?
The New York Times reporter Rachel Abrams is still alive, as is the sprinter from the Northern Mariana Islands. The other Rachel Abrams, who was an artist and writer, died in 2013.
Well done, Echo.
That is incredible. I'm so glad you pointed that out to me. That's really funny.
Well, Rachel Abrams, the one that's still alive, thank you so much for joining us. Rachel Abrams is a business reporter at the New York Times, and she is Rachel Abrams NY on Twitter. That's your handle, right? Not someone else's?
Yes.
Take care.
Thank you,
Rachel.